Hello everybody, welcome to the Duck. You know, one of my favorite games growing up was the legendary, the amazing Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. And today, we're going to be doing something I've wanted to do for some time now. I'm going to make the most recognizable sword from the game, the Steel Sword. Now, this sword I 3D printed a while ago, before my channel, so I don't have any footage of it. So I'll run some footage from another project I'm doing. Basically, I printed the sword in a bunch of parts, and then sanded and super glued them together. After the glue dried, I used some Bondo gap filler to, well, fill the gaps where the glue was. Now, if you want to see the project I teased in this video, subscribe to my channel to see the video when it comes out. Now that you're all caught up, let's get back to the Steel Sword. The next step was to sand down the gap filler and the rest of the sword. This literally took multiple hours and it was still not where I wanted it to be, but I'm just gonna roll with it. After sanding, I gave the entire thing a regrettably white, should have done black, primer coat. This caused me to do some unnecessary multiple coats of paint later. Now we can get to the actual painting. The good thing about the sword is that it's mostly one color with lighter tones that can be dry brushed on. It makes my work a lot easier. So I first get out my base coat for this job, a burnt umber brown for the handle, a light steel gray for the edges of the blade, and some black that I mixed into the gray for a nice dark gray for the entire rest of the sword. I start by basing the blade guard, front and back, with a dark gray. And then, where the handle meets the blade guard, I use burnt umber to clean up the handle. I use the same dark gray for the pommel and both sides of the blade, trying to leave the very edge white. Then, I go in and do multiple coats and get good coverage. Now, if I don't mention it, assume that everything I do on one side of the blade, I mirror onto the other side. I'm also going to take some very creative liberties, so things aren't going to be completely game accurate, like how I do the handle later. Anyway, after all the base coats, I paint the edge of the blade with a light steel gray that I also use a couple of coats on. Then, I take the light gray and coat the slight bevel that the sword has on its edges to make it look sharp even though it's not. Then, on all the raised parts of the blade, guard, and pommel, the same light gray to make the detail pop. Now that all the basic colors are in their place, it's finally time for the metallics. I use a combination of silver and gunmetal gray. I painted all the light gray parts of the blade with the silver, and the dark gray parts with the gunmetal. I made sure not to paint the blade guard. Next, I use the light silver and dry brush on all the dark sections in order to light up the blade and make it look more like what it looks like in game. Then do the same thing on the handle, but with a chestnut brown wash and a khaki dry brush. You know, I was thinking the sword looks a little too clean and pristine for an old worn Nordic sword, so let's add a bit of wear and tear. I use a brown and red wash to add some rust into the nooks and cracks of the model, and then added a bit of khaki in places with a paper towel to add some sort of grind. And then, to finish off the painting, I gave the very edges a white highlight. But we aren't done yet. I think the handle needs something extra. Let's give it some leather. I have an extra leather strip laying around that I dye with some light brown, making sure to dye it unevenly to make it look more homemade. Adding water really helps with this stuff. When the leather is wet, it becomes more bendable, and when it dries, it holds its shape. So I wind up the leather to get it to hold the shape around its handle. Then, take this piece of wood and do what's called burnishing. Burnishing is when the leather is rubbed really hard and its oils fill in the gaps in its surface, making it shiny and smooth. For the final part, I wrap the handle in the leather strip, making it cross over itself, and glued in place. Each place where I crossed, I added the heads of some brass rivets that I tore the back half off of. Now with the handle finished, we're on to the B-roll shots. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day.